And we are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Positive Power Hour. Here's my co host, Nicole. Say hi to Nicole.
Happy Monday, everyone. Power Hour Monday.
Happy Monday. Yes, and you know me, I'm old Dan. And I'm going to start the show off with our banner here in front of you all that says entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that they can spend the rest of their life like most people can't. And so, one of the first things I want to ask for participation of our live audience, hi, Melly, glad you're here, is that if you have a desire to be an entrepreneur, whether you're watching this live or on recording, let us know that that is something you would like to do in your life. All right. Because I can tell you, having been able to work for nearly 30 years as an entrepreneur, that it really is a very liberating kind of life because you're giving your energy to what you want to create, not realizing somebody else's dream for them, right? So let's see if anybody else would like to do that. And, maybe as we go along in these calls, we can give a little more energy to that of okay, here's where I'm blocked. Here's what's my first step that I should take. That kind of thing, right? So we can help you get to where you want to go, even if it's in your job. I'm an anti-job guy, obviously. But if working a job is a better thing for you, that's okay. The world needs workers just as much as they need entrepreneurs, because if there's no workers, there's no entrepreneurship, right? So it's okay. But if you're feeling stumped in any way, any direction in your life, that's what we're here for, is to help you let go of those blockages. Unchain yourself, right? The chains that bind us. And one of my favorite bands, the Eagles, talks about how oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains and we don't even know we have the key, right? Yeah. So that's the direction we want to focus with our Positive Power Hour, is you making your life what you want it to be, even if it is working for somebody else. If there's an area in your life that just isn't as open and free and prosperous as you would like it to be, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a boss, maybe it's a mother or a father or a brother, or who knows, whatever it is that's making your life feel less than whole, that's what we're here to help you with. And so, me chatting all night long is, that's okay. But, you guys are going to get sick of that after a while, I'm sure. But what we're here for is to help you. And if you don't tell me where you could use some help, you're going to get what you get. All right. So, entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't. Had a young man that came into the store the other day, but you know what those Pokemon cards are, Nicole? Have you ever seen those?
Yeah, we
Big
talked about
kids,
that.
right? And we sell a ton of them at Best Buy. I sold 300 to one guy yesterday.
Wow. I didn't think it was such a thing.
Yeah. And, my first thought, and I proved to be right, was that he sells them. So he resells them, right? And I said, so you're an entrepreneur? He goes, well, I'm trying to be. Yes. No. You can't try, right? You're either doing it or you're not. So good for you, and keep on going. Don't stop. And, you'll make mistakes along the way, but that's how you learn and it's how you grow. So just keep on doing it, right? So you see, there are a million different ways of making a living. It doesn't have to be the old way that your folks did, or your great folks did, your grandparents did, right? You can be an entrepreneur in a million different ways. We just have to open up the creativity. And that takes me to our next little thing today. And Nicole doesn't even know about this one, I don't think. So Irene Poole reacted today. Well, yeah, Irene, I hope she's here. Whoops. Hold on. I'll be right back. Oh, there we are. Hi, fam. Irene.
I'm sure it is.
All right. Nice. Let me get to the next banner here. Here we go. So here it is. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. I know that we have quite a few Christians on our broadcast here, and welcome aboard to all of you. And whether you're a Christian or a Buddhist or a monk or a Sikh or whatever it is that you follow, a Catholic, it makes no difference. It's all the same thing, really, right? And so what does be still and know that I am God mean? Nicole, what would that mean to you?
Oh, I think you should describe it.
Oh, I want to get everybody's feedback on it.
Be still, like trust in me. Help, guide. I've got you covered. Have faith.
Yes, have faith. Very good.
Yes.
That's very good. How about my audience out there? Anybody else got an idea of what it means to be still and know that I am God? Looking for comments here. We'll get them eventually. Got to get you guys trained into being a participant in this program, right?
And it's a little delayed as well. So.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's a way I look at it. All right. Be still and know that I am God. Let go and let God. Very good, Irene. I think that's you, right? Very nice. Very nice. Let go and let God. That's a big, big part of it, right? Last week, we had members in our audience that talked about being worriers. Not warriors, but worriers, right? Yeah. And worry is the exact opposite of faith, isn't it?
Yes.
It's about ego as much as we would hate to admit it. And here's Melly saying, must have faith that everything is taken care of. Your life is already written out. That's exactly correct. It's just not easy to remember that, isn't it? Right? There are those times where something happens and it's like, oh my God, this is the worst thing possible. And what's going to happen because of this? And da-da-da-da. And that's when faith just went right out the window. Right? And as a dear friend of mine says all the time, we're about as faithful as our next paycheck. Right? And money isn't everything until there's not enough, and then it becomes everything. And that's true for most of us, right? And it's that need to survive, that feeling that everything's okay and nothing to worry about, right? Well, if we had that faith that Melly talks about right there, must have faith that everything is taken care of. Your life is already written out. And if that's true, and I believe it is, then what are we worrying about? Are we believing that God doesn't love us enough to take care of us, to make sure that everything's going to be okay in our lives? Do we not trust him and stop trying to do everything by yourself and be patient? Awesome. Let me put this up here, Cheryl. That is such a very good post. Stop trying to do everything by yourself and be patient. God is not on your time. You're on his. Yeah. And those are the areas that we have a hard time with, isn't it? Right? It's like we create this box of how everything should look and how everything should be. And it's got to fit in that box. And if it's outside that box, whoa, something's not right, right? And in a program that we know about, they talk about the fact that our biggest problem is a lack of power. Lack of power is a lack of faith. It's ego. It's edging God out, right? And let's face it, we all have egos, except for Nicole. Nicole's got absolutely no ego running in her life at all whatsoever.
Not true.
But for most of us, we have that little ego and it's really the gist of everything, right? It's like when I remember when I was a little boy thinking about the fact that what would happen if I died, I wouldn't exist anymore. Where would I be? What would happen, right? And yet what they teach us to do in faith is understanding that we meld into God, right? We go into that energy. And we lose that separateness that we feel right now, the identity, the ego, the I, right? And so our goal here on earth is to practice getting to that while we're here on earth as it is in heaven, right? So the more we can practice caring less about ourselves and more about others, then we are in faith, right? Because we have no doubt we're taken care of. And the more we take care of others, the more, it's like you can't outgive God, right? But we can keep trying.
Yes.
And really, I know you know this, Nicole. You've had this experience. I know you have. The soul food that comes from just giving of yourself to somebody else with no expectation of yourself whatsoever. Nothing that you're looking to gain from doing it, right? And that changes everything. So when we find ourselves in those moments of lack of faith, whatever that might be, whether it's a financial shortage that feels like drama and problems and crisis, or if it's health, or, we all go through those health issues where, oh my God, what's happening to my body? What happens if I die, right? I mean, all of those thoughts that we go through, that really is the opposite of having faith, of letting everything in your life work the way God already has it planned out for, right? If we could just be the observers and watch what happens. I remember when I was going through the cancer surgery, what an incredible journey it was, right? And when I would explain it to people, they would look at me like I was freaking nuts, right? But the truth was, I got to have wonderful experiences with nurses and doctors and patients, and my family was just so concerned and loving, and that's one of the graces that happens with those kinds of things, is that you kind of remember what's really important, right? And how much you love somebody is when they're going through something, right? So that's, to me, a lot of what Psalm is all about. Let me bring that back up again for anyone that comes in here a little late. Was Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. The biggest thing from my perspective, is what this talks about to me. And my wife was at church yesterday and they were talking about this very thing, which was kind of interesting because I just read that quote earlier in the morning, right? And that is the fact that what our biggest separation from God is our mind.
Mm-hmm.
When our mind is racing, when our mind is chattering, when there's all this conversation going on in our head, we can't hear God's message.
Right.
Right? So be still. Be still physically. In my path, they talk about, don't just do something, sit there. Right? Which sounds so counterintuitive to our busy life, Western way of living, that is go, do, be, and get all this stuff done. And, the winner is the guy that makes the most money or has the most possessions or whatever all that stuff is. And you can't just sit on a chair your whole life, because that won't take you anywhere either, right? But what will come from that is that stillness. And that stillness is when you get to really feel God and hear God and be connected to God. The mind is what separates us.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's where meditation is so important. It's where yoga is so important. It's where almost all of the East Indian philosophies are important, right? And the Christian world, and all of it talks about basically the same thing, as letting go and letting God. Get clear about the fact that you're not running the show, right? So our goal is to, still the mind as best we can. And the way we know we can help that's different than everybody else would be what, Nicole?
To be still.
Ah, yes. And the tool that we can offer
yes.
with that is our whispers, right?
Into my compartment.
Yep. Yeah. She's wearing them all the time. And I'm really glad to see that, because it's one of the challenges I get in this work is getting people to wear them. Because
Well, Melly was here this weekend and she had hers on as well.
oh, very good. Yay. Glad to hear it. And I would love to hear some feedback from my audience of people that are wearing them. Of what are you noticing? What are you noticing? Any minor little shifts in yourself or in your thinking or in your interactions?
Yeah, I do. I feel like it's not as jerky or up and down as much, right? Like
Right.
it's kind of like level, even with big things going on or little things going on.
Yeah. And that's what happens. Is that yo-yo thing starts to quiet down, right? And that negative mind chatter starts to dissipate. And you find yourself being able, and this is all again from my experience, right? And I've only been wearing these for like 40 years now. So I only have a little experience, right? But what you start to notice is that you're actually having positive conversations with your mind. Right. Whereas most of us are like, God, shut up. I don't want to hear you anymore. Right. That's the way it was for me. I mean, I couldn't go to sleep at night because my mind was just running all the time. So what happened when I started working in this field was that I just started noticing that my mind got quieter and quieter and quieter. And, you know, and I think we've talked about in our show before about how back in the old days of the mystics, right, the gurus that would go live in a cave for months and do nothing but eat and meditate. Yes, there's a couple of other things they would do, but we won't get into that, right? But they spent all of their time in meditation. And what happens when you do that is first you have to spin off all the gross energy that builds up in the mind, all the sense pleasure stuff that builds up in there and all of the gross materials that are in our consciousness, right? That all has to spin off to where we get purer and purer. And as you do that, your consciousness raises, kind of like a hot air balloon, right? That lighter, softer air goes, pushes the balloon up, right? And it's the same thing with our soul, is that the soul starts to raise up, right? And so in those days, they'd come out of the cave after months of meditation and having an awareness of things that you and I just aren't even capable of, right? And they would go out and start sharing this information with people. Crowds would gather and it would be, oh my gosh, that is so wonderful. And then what they're doing is egos coming back into play. All of the energy of other people are starting to affect them, and their energy starts to come down, 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 down to where they crash, right? And suddenly that guy that seemed like an absolute genius now is being looked at as a charlatan or a freaking nutcase, right? Yeah. So that's what happens to us too, right? On a much more minor scale than, the mystics, right? But we'll have those days of clarity where we understand exactly who we are and where we're going and what we want. And we're at the level of peace and we have confidence and everything feels great. And then the next day, the boss looks at you sideways and you're just all twisted.
Yeah.
Right?
And they've done that.
Yeah, or a customer that you're working with and you've put months in trying to help land a real estate deal, and suddenly they don't answer their phone anymore, right? And you're just like, what did I do? What happened? Right? So it's those kinds of things that happen all the time in life. What we want to do is go more like an upward climb, right? And yeah, you get peaks, you get little stops and a little waving, kind of like a bird learning to fly, right? I gave you that analogy before about how manic depression was kind of like a bird learning to fly, right? Well, it's true for all of us. It's not just the manics that get that kind of experience. They just get it on a higher scale.
Yeah.
But we all go through it, right? We all have those times of absolute confidence, and we feel certain we're on the right track and everything is great. I've got the right husband, my kids are great, whatever it is, right? And then all of a sudden you notice that, oh, gee, yeah, but he still does this. And we all have that, right? So that's where wearing whispers becomes such an important part, is that it helps to keep that energy. And we talked about the homing device, right? Everything going back to normal, right? Back to center. And that's where we want to be, is in center, and maybe a little to the upside, right? But it's much easier to accomplish that when you're wearing whisper subtle energy filters. All right. So that's enough of the product pitch, but I just wanted to mention again that, what this whole work is about is helping you to unlock that power that's within you, because most of us, to a large degree or less, are powerless. We allow our lives to be dictated by all of the activities outside of us rather than the energy within us. All right. So that's the whole thing. Be still and know that I am God. And let me go back to comments here. As Cheryl said so well, stop trying to do everything by yourself and be patient. God is not on your time and you're not on his. And God's got it. He doesn't need your help. Right? So, and as Melly says, have faith that everything is taken care of. Your life is already written out. That's an amazing sentence when you think about it, isn't it, Nicole? Your life is already planned out. The what's supposed to happen is already determined. So what are we? We think we're the director. We think we're the script writer, and we're making adjustments to the script. I mean, what are we thinking, right?
Well, I can elaborate on that a little bit with the whole, it's already written out, but we also have free will, right? So
yeah,
sometimes we're still on the same path, but we're going to take a little detour for our own little will here. But I think I know better. Let me go over here. But we're still on that same path. It's just going to take you longer to get back to the trail.
Yeah. As my teacher would say, you can either go kicking or screaming, or you can go in an air-conditioned limo. Either way, you're going to go.
Yes.
Right? So why not do it the easy way and just let go and let God, like Irene said here, right? Let go and let God.
Yes.
It's like our body image, right? How many of us have a really healthy body image? Not many, right? And we'll look at, gee, my head's too big, or my feet are too small, or my hips are too big, or my, chest. For me, it's my chest. I've got a really big chest, right? And it makes my whole body look out of proportion to me, right? And I even asked my mentor one day, I said, why do you think God gave me such a big shoulder and or big chest and broad shoulders? He goes, I don't know, but it has worked for you to work, right? And I said, yeah. And so you see, no matter how we look at our own body, and we think that we know better, God made a mistake when he did this and when he did that, right? That there's a reason for all of it.
Yes.
And what do you think the reason might be, Nicole, that we would judge a body image of ourselves as bad? But God made it that way for what reason? What reason would that be? Any idea for any of it?
No.
Okay. Well, let me give you a thought, a possibility. That no matter how you view your shortcomings, physical, emotional, mental, whatever the case is, it's those very shortcomings that help us to grow. Right? And if this goes back to perception. We've talked about this a lot on our show, right? Is that there are a myriad of ways of looking at anything, but you have the choice of looking at it in the way you want to.
Right. So
you can either look at yourself and say, oh my God, God gave me such a big chest. Well, I don't know why he did that. What the heck was that for, right? It's one of those things I would do. That's right. And I'll pop that up there in just a minute, Melly. My realization is that I get to learn how to be accepting of my big chest. And I can enjoy having a big chest today, right? Or I can choose that, God, this is awful. I don't even like taking my shirt off in public. I can't stand the way my body looks. Which one's going to make me feel better?
Just enjoy it and accept it.
Enjoy it and accept it. Exactly
Yeah.
right. Because you can't change it anyway. There's nothing I can do to make my chest smaller.
No.
Unless I do what Jeremy Renner did and have a snowplow land on it, right? And break every bone in my chest. Now, I don't care to do that, nor does he like that way that turned out either, right? So no matter what the situation is, if we can find the positive, I've told the story before about when 9/11 happened, and a friend of mine, a friend of mine said, "Oh my God, what a horrible thing." And I said, "Yeah, but there's a lot of positives that come out of it." And his response was, "Oh God, I hate you and your positive thinking all the time. What the hell is positive about this?" Right? And I said, "Well, let's look at a few things, right? Number one, the people that died during that event, they're not suffering anymore. They're not dealing with this worldly plane anymore. They've gone home to the Father. So their journey is done. God gave them a short journey for a reason, right? It's like Melly said right here, have faith that it's already written out. That was the script God made for those people. For us to judge it as bad or wrong or any of those things is, again, making ourselves God that we understand better than he does, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And during that time, didn't you notice people being a little kinder and a little more thoughtful of each other, right? There wasn't all the divisiveness we're seeing today. I hope we don't have to have another major crisis for us to pull away from that and get back to caring about each other again. Right?
Well, we did after that. We had the pandemic. Remember?
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing.
And that was probably the start of the tear apart because everybody had different ideas of how the pandemic should have been handled, right?
That's true.
Yeah. And again, there's both sides playing God. All right. And so where am I at here? I think I got another new one to show. It's those, here's from Melinda. It's those shortcomings that get us closer to God. That's exactly right. They help us to become stronger, right? As we get past that idea that we're deeply flawed, right? And then the other side of it is that as we get to, and we talk about this being an inside job all the time, don't we? Right?
Yeah.
That what we're experiencing inside ourselves is what we're going to experience outside in the world. So if I'm judging my body as being flawed and that, God made a mistake on it, we're also going to look at everybody else's body and see the flaw that we perceive on them, right? Which doesn't help anybody either.
At all,
right? There's that energy thing, right? What energy are you projecting out into the world? Is it positive and loving and kind and gentle, or is it castrating and what are the words I'm looking for?
Degrading
greed and jealousy and ugliness, right? Which one are you putting out there? For me, I'm fortunate that I get to put out a lot of love all day long. I just have a ball doing it, right? One of my new things that I'm doing a lot is when the kids come up to the counter, I'll ask them if they're having fun today. And if a kid didn't get what he wanted when he came into the checkout line, the answer usually is no, not yet, because they didn't get that candy or that game or whatever it was they wanted. Some will say, yeah, I'm having fun. That's okay, because it's a rule. You have to have fun every day, right? Have fun every day. And then I'll turn to the parents and I'll say, I say this to the kids, but I really want the parents to hear it. Because too many times us parents get all wrapped up in the busyness of the world and we forget to have fun.
Yeah.
Right? And then the way the next part of that goes into is the fact that I totally lost it. If you're so busy in the world that you're not allowing yourself to have, I know where it was. The parents, right? I talk a lot with the parents about the fact that we don't teach our children nearly so much by our words as we do by how we live our life.
Yes.
right? And I think I shared this last week that, for me, my dad was a chronic worrier. And I saw that on his face all the time. Now, if I was raising 9 children and there were months where money was tight and things were hard, that would probably make me worried too, right? But what he taught me was that life is hard, life's a struggle, and you have to worry about it, right? Whereas I know there are parents that teach their children everything's going to be okay. It's a little tight right now, but that's all right. This is what God wants for us. And we're going to get through this with grace and peace and joy and happiness. And when the abundance flows again, we will be in that same place, joy and happiness and peace, right? It doesn't have to change because of our outer environment if we have our inner environment correct, right? So we talk about this a lot, and you guys may get tired of hearing it. And if you do, just put it in the comment section there. Tell old Dan to shut up. We've heard this enough, right? But the reality is, if we really understood it all, we wouldn't need to be doing this, right? But the reality is that we forget. Yeah. And old habits kick back up. And the mind left unattended will always take us back. So we have to be ever vigilant and constantly reminding ourselves and training our mind to think the way we want it to think.
Yes.
One of the things we've talked about a lot on this broadcast, on this podcast, is the fact that most of us never learned that we even had an option of training our mind. Right? And so if you didn't know that coming in, how in the world would you know to do that, right? Luke and I, and here's another one from Ellie. Luke and I tried very hard to make sure that Richard doesn't know anything about our finances. It's not his problem and should not worry about it. He should be a kid. Yes, absolutely true. That's an adult problem, not a child problem, right? And you and Luke would do well to remember that God's got it handled, right? But we all forget. We're human.
Yep.
Right? And money, it's like money isn't the most important thing until you don't have enough, and then it becomes everything, right? And money makes the world go around, unfortunately. But here's the really interesting thing a friend of mine said about that. God didn't create money. God gave all this to us.
Yeah.
To use the way we wanted to use it, right? We're the ones that created the money system. We're the ones that made it important that, we make more money, and, the disease of more that most of us suffer through, right? Is the disease of more. And so Melinda follows up with, yes, I'm so happy because we're far better off now than we have been. It always, excuse me, it always works out. And see, that's a very profound sentence right there, Melinda. Very good. It always works out. We just forget, right? Especially those of us that grew up, and we've talked about this before, that especially those of us that grew up in drama, everything becomes dramatic, right? Oh my God, we just won the lottery of $1,000. Oh my God, we just lost $1,000. Oh my God, I just found out I've got cancer. Oh my God, God took it away. It's, all of those things, right? Rather than, oh, isn't that interesting? Right? We had a friend that used to teach people that he was coaching, that rather than saying, oh my God, this horrible thing happened or that happened or this and that, and he'd just say, why don't you just look at it and say, oh, that's interesting. Right? And we've talked about how we judge this as good and that is bad and this is white and that is gray and this is black and this is red and yellow, all the different things that we judge, right? That person's fat. That one's too skinny. That one's too tall. That one's too short. You know what I mean? We do all that kind of stuff without realizing that if we would just look at it and go, wow, isn't that interesting? Our energy would be more like this, right? And it would keep elevating up like that hot air balloon, right? getting up into the higher levels. Because we would look at everybody as being that child of God that you are. If you think and believe that you're a child of God, then you have to understand that God made you perfect exactly the way you are.
Yes.
If He wanted you to be different, you'd be different, right? So if God made us perfect just the way we are, that means He made Nicole perfect just the way she is. That He made Melinda perfect just the way she is. And she made Cheryl just perfect the way she is. And
Irene,
I had her name a minute ago and I just, it's that 70s thing, right? Irene is absolutely perfect the way she is. Every one of us is perfect just the way we are. And if we could rejoice in that, could you imagine the difference of the energy you'd be putting out into the world? How much more you'd have an impact on people's lives if you got to look at them with, instead of those judging eyes, of having the eyes of acceptance and love and joy and happiness and grace emanating from you. That's what we can be as we open up more and more. So oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains and we don't even know we have the key.
yes.
Yeah, that's true slavery. We enslave ourselves, right? And nobody around us does it, right? It's an inside job again. We just don't realize it. I can tell you from going, and I've talked about this before, Nicole, and I know you don't remember a lot about my younger years, and why would you? I don't think you were there when the dinosaurs were there, were you?
Nope.
But
The way I feel today, maybe.
Huh?
The way I feel today, maybe.
Maybe. I can remember the hell that I was in, that I forced. I created it, and I didn't even know it, right? That I felt like I was in those chains, that I was a slave to my mind, and my life sucked. And it was awful, even though I had a wonderful wife and wonderful children and all of those wonderful things. All I saw was everything sucked, right? So of course that was the world I created, but I didn't even realize it, right? Why would God allow that to happen? I've heard people say, why would God allow a plane to crash and kill people? And why do little babies suffer and all of those things? It's not out of anger. It's not out of resentment. It's not out of punishing. It's about helping us to understand who we are and who He is and what this life is all about. It's a short time here on earth anyway. Relatively speaking, it goes in a snap of a finger, right? If I could snap my fingers. But the more we can realize that saying, on earth as it is in heaven, we create that. I created hell here on earth, right? Your life is more like heaven than it's ever been, isn't it, Nicole?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And so is Melinda, and so is Cheryl, and so is Irene. All of our lives are better than they were.
Yes.
And the more we recognize God's hand in everything, I remember that saying I've used a number of times. I should make a banner with that one as well, is that those who put everything in God's hands eventually see God's hand in everything.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the gist of it all, is like, who was it? I think it was Cheryl that said, it was Irene who said, let go and let God.
Yes.
Just let go. In my spiritual path, the saying that they use often is that we could all be in heaven this very instant if we just let go. Right? Enjoy the moment.
Yes.
Be in the moment. The moment is the present, the gift from God, right? But when you're spending all of your time focused on the past, the mistakes, and the what could have been and what should have been, and all of that kind of stuff, or fearing the future because you don't know what's coming next, who does?
Right.
God.
Yeah.
Right? So if we just let go and we look at life like, wow, isn't that interesting? Then we become more childlike, right? It's like the beautiful thing about Christmas is watching kids come out and see all the presents and the utter amazement of all of this stuff and the excitement and the joy that they, and they'll usually spend more time playing with the box that the gift came in than they will the gift, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But and that's such a lesson for us as well, right? Is that it isn't so much about the gift, it's the little things that we can enjoy so much, right? So that's the whole thing about, let me go back to it right here. Let me find it. There we go. Be still. Nope, that's not. Yeah, that is it. That's it. Be still and know that I am God. If we could just let go. Let go of the judgments. Let go of the punishment. Let go of the beatings we give ourselves, right? We all need discipline. It's an important part of growing up, right? You have to be disciplined. It's like, yeah, I could have 4 more candy bars, but, maybe if I just have one, I can enjoy that, right? That's discipline, isn't it? Right? Yeah. Discipline doesn't have to be a negative thing. Discipline means that you're thoughtful about your actions and your deeds, right? It's not, let me beat good habits into you, right? It's about gently and easily creating good habits that make you pleased with how you live your life, right? None of us are perfect. That's the perfection.
Right.
I've told that story about years ago going to a therapist because I needed to figure out what was wrong with me because I knew there was something wrong, right? And and after they took me to this, I don't remember whether it was Briggs something test that you take that was like almost a binder full of papers, and you go through all of these questions and they repeat them in different ways, and that's how they get to the real nut of who you are, how your perception of yourself is, right? And when the results came in, she called me, she said, Dan, come in, we've got your results. I'm so excited because I'm going to find out what's wrong with me, right? And she said, Dan, what the test told me was something that I knew about you the first minute I talked with you. And she said, and I have to tell you that I liked you instantly, and that's not normal for me. And I thought, well, wait, you're a therapist. I would think you're supposed to like people, right? But I got her point. Her point was that her job was to be an evaluator, right? And if you're biased towards somebody, you're not going to be able to get a good read on the person. So you need to be really centered on your job at hand, right? So anyway, she said the test results showed that the only thing that was really wrong with me was that I was a perfectionist. Do we have anybody in the audience that views themselves as a perfectionist? If so, let us know in the comments, please. Anybody else have that disease of perfectionism? How about you, Nicole? Did you ever have any of it?
I don't think I really fall in line with the perfectionism. I don't know, maybe, but I don't perceive myself as that.
Okay, so one of the things that I used to think, in fact, that's what I told the therapist, was I can't be a perfectionist. I don't do anything well. She goes, yeah, that's a perfectionist.
Yeah, I guess.
Huh?
I don't feel like I don't do
That's
everything.
good. That's good.
Yeah,
good yeah, that's great. But and I guess nobody else did either. We haven't gotten any comments yet here about anyone being a perfectionist, right? But for me, perfectionism was that no matter how good I did anything, I could have done it a little better, right? I could have done better. It's not as good as it could be, right? And a lot of artists suffer with that too, right? They'll, it's like you ask any musician who made a big hit and you go, yeah, but there was that one line in there that I know that if I had just done it different, it would have been a much better song, right? I think so. I think is what you meant there, Cheryl, right? I can't even write a text without going over it several times. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Now, it's one thing to make sure that it was supposed to say, I think I am. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I guess you're a perfectionist, right? You ain't got that right yet. But it's when looking at something and correcting it is one thing, but looking at it and beating yourself up for a week because you made that mistake, that's the problem with perfectionism, right? Is that you can't even allow yourself to enjoy the experience of a mistake, right? Yeah. And so we get and be still and know I'm God. I wonder how that popped back up there. How about that? That's nice. So, that's the whole idea here is to work towards that stillness,
Yes.
right? Nothing so bad that it couldn't be worse. Nothing so good it couldn't be better. The bad time never lasts, nor does the good time. Both of them will come and go, just like we do.
Yep.
Right? So enjoy the moment. And rather than focusing on what you are getting or not getting, focusing on what you can give. It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be anything. It can simply be a caring look,
Yes.
right? Or as we end our show with every week, you could give that smile because it's free.
That's
And
right.
it does so much for so many people. Here's an interesting comment. My bipolar disorder won't let me harp on things long. Laugh out loud. Well,
On to the next squirrel.
I'm on to the next obsessive thing. Obsessive compulsive, right? Yeah. Well, and again, Melinda, you're absolutely right by something you said early on about where was it? Cheryl said, well, let's see, we got a whole bunch of great comments in here.
Those shortcomings that get us closer to God.
Yep. And Irene about let go and let God, right?
Yep.
And Melinda must have faith that everything's taken care of, right? If you really get that fact, you won't be obsessive about anything. You won't need to, because you'll be in that calm place, right? I've shared it on this program before about the first time that I remember driving from Corona to my home here, when we lived in Murrieta. And that's probably about 45 minutes or so from Corona to home here. And I hadn't had a single thought, right? And I was like, oh my God, that was so amazing, right? And now I get to do that quite a bit, right? But it's such an amazing thing when you're used to your mind running all the freaking time that it won't shut up, and you are literally a slave to your mind, that hellacious way of living. The more you can let go and let God, as Irene said, or you could stop trying to do everything by yourself and be patient. God is not on your time, you're on his. As Cheryl said, then those days where you are really calm and peaceful increase. Yeah. And then it's like a snowball effect. It just keeps building and building and building, right? To where, it's like most days I can't wait to get up in the morning and get going, right? Not because I've got, probably because I'm a human being rather than I'm a human doing rather than a human being, right? But I'm just excited about seeing what God has in store for me today, right? That's a whole different way of looking at it than I've got to make this happen and I've got to make that happen, right? I just get to dress up and show up and see what happens. And it's always amazing. Always. So we're right at 6:50, and I think today you've probably all heard about enough from old Dan today, right?
I don't think
But
that's why, but
but what I've seen in my years, at least in my own family, and I know actually I've seen it through a lot of people, is that the more we start practicing these things, and again, it takes practice, right?
yes.
None of us mastered this overnight. And most of us, we're like that great, we talked about that ocean liner, right? That it takes a long time to turn a great big ship in the ocean, right? You can't just do a U-turn. It's got to be a big old swing, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with us. So we have to be patient and know that God is working in our corner, right? He's got our back. And if we'll just keep doing the next indicated step and practice patience and kindness and love, everything gets much, much better. So, Nicole, on the fact that if we let go and let God, and if we be still and know that I am God, that if I can quiet my mind, I can hear God direct me. I can hear that little voice that says, no, 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 don't turn left, go straight, right? Because that's, for me, a lot of that is our intuitive. That's God speaking through us, right? And you ladies used to have intuition in spades. And then y'all decided you wanted to be more like us men. Y'all wanted to be able to go to work and still raise children and clean the house and do all these other things, right? And so your mind became more like us men, where you're thinking too darn much, right? Whereas before you were home and that mind was quieter, more peaceful, right? But that's what y'all chose, and that's God. And again, is God bringing that balance, right? That men and women are powerful in their own way, in their own right, right? So be still this week and know that I am God. Practice being still. Practice not judging yourself or other people. Practice being happy and sharing that happiness with others, right? Letting people know how much they mean to you, right? When I first started doing that, it was a little scary because that wasn't done in my house. I didn't talk a lot about those kinds of things. So I had to develop that on my own. Well, we all do, right? We all have to develop it on our own. No matter how we were raised, it's still an inside job. We have to do the cleaning, right? All right. So, Nicole, if you happen to see anybody this week who doesn't have a smile, what do you think you ought to do?
Give them one of mine.
And why would you do that?
Because they're free. And it feels good.
And it makes them feel good. And it makes you feel good, right? Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving, and it doesn't cost a thing. So I wish you all a very wonderful week. I hope that all of you will be still and know that God is in you. And that if you can quiet your mind, you'll get to feel him and hear him and be a little bit more like him, right? So until next week, everybody, if you don't love yourself, wait around. We'll keep loving you until you can love yourself. All right. And we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody. We love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.